Let's start with what Trump actually said, because this is the moment that lit the fuse. On Friday, at a police academy event in Garden City, New York, standing next to Republican gubernatorial nominee Bruce Blakeman, the president was asked to address gas prices that have now crossed the $4 mark. He told the crowd, for you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline, just remember, you're doing it so that a very evil country cannot have a nuclear weapon. Adding, remember that when you have to pay a little bit more, you're at $4, it's okay. Then came the line that's now everywhere online. I'll never apologize, I did the right thing, he said. Here's why that landed so badly with his own side. This is quite the reversal from candidate Trump, who repeatedly promised Americans dramatically cheaper energy and boasted that he would quickly bring gasoline below $2 per gallon. And he doubled down on that memory himself at the same event, telling the crowd he'd once gotten gas below $2 in many states. Fact checkers were quick to point out gas hasn't been below $2 nationally since 2004. The timing made it worse, just one day before Trump stood on that stage and said he'd never apologize. Vice President J.D. Vance said lowering costs was goal number one for the administration. So within 24 hours, voters got two completely different messages from the top of the Republican Party. One man saying $4 is fine, and he's proud of it. The other saying cheaper gas is priority number one. Gas prices are one of the clearest economic signals voters feel directly, and mixed messaging from the top of the administration could complicate how the White House manages public expectations heading into the months ahead. That's the split screen Republicans are now running on, 3 months out from an election that decides who controls Congress. To understand why Republicans are panicking, you have to understand how fast this got worse and how directly it traces back to one decision: the war with Iran. When the U.S. first launched attacks on Feb 28, average gas prices nationally were $2.98 a gallon per AAA. That's the baseline, less than $3 a gallon the day the bombing started. From there, it was a roller coaster. Prices eclipsed $4.5 in May, gradually dropped to about $3.75, and are now flirting with the $4 mark since combat broke out again. By this week, gas prices hit their highest ever price for this point in the year, according to GasBuddy, which noted that gas prices have never gone above $4 per gallon after August 12 in any year. Diesel tells the same story, and it matters even more because it's baked into the price of everything else Americans buy. Average diesel prices, which help drive consumer prices as companies pass along increased transportation costs to buyers, climbed well above $5.5 a gallon, up from levels a month earlier. Every truck moving groceries, furniture, or building supplies is paying that markup, and it's landing on shelves everywhere. One research estimate puts a real number on the damage. The national average price of regular gasoline stood at $4.241 per gallon, up from $3.144 a year earlier, an increase of nearly 35%. And Moody's Analytics estimated the conflict cost American households roughly $100 billion over 3 months, or about $750 per household, through higher fuel, transportation, and related costs. That's not an abstraction to voters. That's a real hit to a family budget every single week at the pump and at the grocery store. And it's not just Republicans feeling this from the outside. The polling shows their own voters are feeling it too. A recent survey found Trump has hit the highest disapproval rating on gas prices ever recorded for a president. President Trump has hit the highest national disapproval rating on gas prices in recorded history, as 79% of Americans and a whopping 52% of Republicans feel negatively about how he's handled skyrocketing gas prices. CNN's Harry Ten put it bluntly on air, saying no president has been hated more when it comes to gas prices, and calling the 79% figure the highest disapproval rating for any president on record. For context on how unusual that is, former presidents George Bush, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, who each had their own struggles with gas prices, never eclipsed a 75% disapproval rating on the issue. The Republican number inside that poll is the one that should scare strategists the most. The poll's party line breakdown is even more devastating, as 52% of Republicans disapproving may put Trump-backed candidates at risk in their November elections as they have to answer for his decisions, especially in swing states. That's a majority of Trump's own base, saying they don't like what he's doing on this one issue. And a separate poll backs it up. 60% of Americans blame him for higher gasoline prices, according to a Navigator research poll. This is landing directly on Trump's overall approval too, not just the gas-specific numbers. As gas prices climb thanks to his war in Iran, President Donald Trump's approval is now at its lowest level of either term, standing at an abysmal 37% in the Times average, with disapproval at a stunningly high 60%, a gap far worse than the one before his first midterm election that led to a Democratic wave. Republicans have seen this movie before, and they know how it ends if it doesn't turn around fast. This is where it stops being about polling numbers and starts being about actual Republicans, on the record, breaking from the president. Start with Tom Tillis, the retiring senator from North Carolina, who doesn't have to worry about primary voters anymore because he's leaving Congress. Tillis said flatly that anxiety over the war means it might be time for some Republican lawmakers to separate from the administration. Tillis said anxiety over Iran may mean it's time for some Republican lawmakers to separate from the White House on the war, adding if it's unpopular and they feel that way, they should tell their constituents the truth. That's about as blunt a break as you'll hear from a sitting Republican senator. Then there's Senator Jim Justice of West Virginia, who's not pushing back on the war itself, but is demanding an exit strategy after a Pentagon hearing left Republicans frustrated. There's got to be an off-ramp, that's all there is to it, Justice said, adding, naturally all of us are concerned, because we've lost 3 wonderful, wonderful service people in the last little while. Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas has been even more direct about tying the whole midterm outcome to the price at the pump. Certainly, I think that the midterms will be decided by the price of gasoline in October, Marshall said, adding, if we're going to do something, we've got to rip the bandage off and just go in there. Then you've got the party's own strategists sounding alarms in public. GOP pollster Brent Buchanan called the whole situation a dead end. It's one of those issues where there's almost no upside. GOP pollster and Signal founder Brent Buchanan said of the conflict. Fellow strategist Doug Hay has said the party has already blown through its window to fix this before voters lock in their opinions. There is a timeline, and we've already passed it, GOP strategist Doug Hay told Fox News Digital. Hay also warned that now is when voters' minds about the economy are starting to solidify, and gas prices are a huge driver of that. Not every Republican is willing to go that far in criticizing the president directly, though, and that split is its own story. Take Richard Hudson, the North Carolina congressman who runs the House GOP's campaign arm. He told reporters Republicans are watching the gas situation closely, but stopped well short of blaming Trump. It's certainly something we're concerned about, Hudson said, adding President Trump did the right thing in going after Iran, and we need to support what he's doing. If that means we have to go to the voters and explain it, so be it. Senator Ted Budd of North Carolina took a similar tack, redirecting blame toward the previous administration instead. Biden gave you $5 gas for no good reason, and President Trump, all Republicans, want to lower gas prices and make things more affordable for Americans. Budd told reporters, adding, we're trying to fix a problem that came to us, and that's a country that shouts death to America. And Congressman David Valado of California, who's defending a seat Democrats are actively targeting, admitted the economics matter, but tried to shift the conversation towards state-level policy instead of the war. He told reporters economic factors, obviously, impact elections, but added that California policies had a bigger impact on prices in his district. So you've got a party genuinely divided into 2 camps. One camp, Tillis, Justice, Marshall, the strategists, is willing to say publicly that this is a real problem tied directly to the war and the president's handling of it. The other camp, Hudson, Budd, Valado, is trying to hold the line, deflect to Biden or to local regulation, and stick with the president in public even while privately worried. One Republican operative described it plainly. Privately, most GOP lawmakers are in the camp of it's time to wrap this thing up. According to a Republican operative who requested anonymity, who added that publicly, congressional Republicans have been largely unified on Iran. That's the tension, private panic, public discipline, and it's starting to crack in full view. Democrats, meanwhile, aren't shy about pouring gasoline on the fire. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries posted directly connecting the price spike to the war. He wrote, gas prices are back above $4 per gallon. The Republican war of choice in Iran is making life more expensive. DCCC Chair Susan DelBene has said her committee will keep hammering the issue, arguing Trump went into this war without thinking through the implications, and we've seen gas prices skyrocket across the country. On top of prices going up for families, housing, food, healthcare, all going up because of actions taken by this president and Republicans in Congress. Democrats have run digital ads with the tagline, "DC Republicans did that," plastered over rising price signs, and they've promised more coming before November. So where does this actually leave Republicans heading into the fall? The honest answer is nowhere good, and the clock is louder than ever. Columnist Nolan Finley laid out the stakes about as clearly as anyone in the party has dared to. He wrote that Trump is running out of time to find a genuine solution that spares Republicans from the consequences of his war with Iran, with less than a month to rescue his party's candidates, and that if the nation gets to Labor Day with gasoline prices still well above $4 a gallon, and the president still engaged in an unresolved standoff with Iran, the GOP may as well concede the November election. He added there's a hard deadline behind all of this. It's already too late to orchestrate a full turnaround before absentee ballots are mailed in late September, Finley wrote. Political analyst G. Elliott Morris has poured more cold water on the idea that a sudden price drop could bail Republicans out even if one materializes. He points to research showing people tend to form their impressions of a president's handling of the economy and hold on to it. And that change in the economy tends to predict voter behavior throughout a president's whole term, not just toward the end. In other words, even if prices dip before November, the damage to how voters feel about this administration's handling of costs may already be locked in. Morris also noted the White House has leaned into a symbolic gesture rather than a structural fix. The president has recently heavily promoted a series of gas stations that supposedly have cheaper fuel than their surrounding pumps, which strategists see as a band-aid, not a solution. There's also a bigger, harder-to-shake number sitting underneath all of this. Trump is historically unpopular and has lost ground on all the issues on which he won the 2024 election, namely prices and immigration. And the Republican coalition has shrunk significantly since his inauguration. Gas prices didn't create that erosion by themselves, but they've become the most visible, most felt symbol of it. Something every driver sees every time they pull up to a pump. And the political science backs up why this one issue carries so much weight. A landmark 2016 study found that for every 10 cents gas prices rise, presidential approval falls 0.6 percentage points. At the kind of increase Republicans have watched unfold since February, from under $3 to over $4. That math adds up to a real and measurable drag on the president's numbers, translating directly into vulnerable seats up and down the ballot. So has this actually gotten ugly inside the Republican Party? By every measure available. Retiring senators publicly urging colleagues to break from the White House, sitting senators tying the entire midterm outcome to the price of gasoline. Party strategists using words like no upside and admitting they've already blown past their own deadline. Yes, this has moved past private grumbling into open, on-the-record division. Trump has made his position unmistakably clear. He's not apologizing. He says he did the right thing, and $4 a gallon is, in his words, okay. Whether his party can survive standing next to that position through November is the question that's now splitting Republicans in public, with less than 3 months left to find an answer.